there, Damien Shillingford, and myself, who has been working with them. And we also have Margot Larrock, who is representing WAVE. At this point, so we just want to say welcome to all of you, and also thanks to Imon Yuso being with us and bringing our event live. And there are some other persons here, we also welcome you. At this point, we will go straight into the agenda for today. Yeah. So at this point, we'll go straight into the agenda for today. First of all, I'll just present the background and the history of a brief history of the Botanic Gardens. It's said that once you know your history, then you know where you are coming from. So we have to be conscious of the historic aspects of the Botanic Gardens. Then Mr. Urban Mate will present, first of all, the different proposals of 5 different organizations which we found out to exist in. Then Damien Shillingford will look at the National Trust, which exists in all the different Caribbean countries. He'll select a few and let us know how they safeguard some of their national heritage, like the Botanic Gardens. We hope to see Tiani Bihanzi, who will present on the tenure of the Botanic Gardens. And finally, we'll have a wrap-up, and we also encourage persons here to register to become members of Friends of the Botanic Gardens. All right, so by way of background, as I said, our first forum was held on September 28th, and at that forum we had presentations from Dr. Lennox Honeychurch, Dr. Davidson Shillingford of the Academy of Arts and Science, and Anita Ulu. Subsequently, or immediately after the forum, a task force was formed to move the process forward. This task force was later renamed what we call Friends of the Botanic Gardens. So Friends of the Botanic Gardens is essentially a subgroup of WAVE, but their focus will be on the Botanic Gardens only. And you, as I said earlier, are encouraged to become part of that organization. So now, when that task force was formed, we assigned tasks to the different members, and so some members were responsible for reviewing the existing proposals and coming up with, informing the public about what exists and how we can modify it to suit our times. So this forum will be a presentation of our findings. And there was also another group that was responsible for meeting with the PAREP and sensitizing to what we are preparing. I'm not too sure how far they are with this, but that is part of the process to inform her as we go along of what we are doing. Okay, so now by way of history, of the Botanic Gardens, we know that legislation for the Botanic Garden or establishing the Botanic Gardens was passed in 1889. That was 134 years ago. That's the time when our forefathers who had the wisdom of recognizing that we needed a Botanic Gardens, which would be the envy of the entire region. And in 1891, the site was selected. It is bounded on the east by Bath Road, but to the north by Valley Road. In the past, the area where we are right now, which is the University of the West Indies campus, was also part of it because it was bounded by the Rose River, and then it's bounded to the south by the hills of Bruce. So that's the boundary of it, and in 1889 it was bought. In 1891, the site, it was actually bought for 1,765 pounds from William Davis, who was then the owner of Bath Estate. So it was part of the Bath Estate property, which was then a sugar estate. But by that time, sugar had lost its importance. So the ground was cleared, it was bought, the ground was cleared, and in the 1890s, work started in earnest for the establishment of the gardens. So the map you see there is a map of the Botanic Garden as existed way back in 1889. We see as I said, most of it is still existing. You see the main roadways. The town of Roseau is to the south and east. So it shows that Roseau is not actually part of the gardens, or the gardens is not actually part of Roseau. It's on the boundaries of the town of Roseau. Bath Estate is the estate which still has, whose name still exists, and then you have Roseau River, Bruce, and Kings Hill to the south. The establishment of the gardens was overseen by the Colonial Office and the Royal Botanic Gardens of Kew in southwest England, London. Kew was the center for the collection and distribution of plants from across the empire. So I took this quote from Dr. Leonard Church, who says, "This then is our inheritance. We must plant it back for future generations." And this is a quote we should really bear in mind as we go through this process. Okay, the next 4 slides are slides which I took from the DAS website. These are intended to, take you back in time, to that time when the land was acquired and work started in earnest, and the impression people had of the Botanic Gardens. As we go through them, you'll realize, the Botanic Gardens was a gem. It was actually the best in the Caribbean at this time, and it is when you think of all this should give us more reason to ensure that it's not just done away with, that whatever is done to it is done in a way that, reminds us of that heritage that we have. So in the first commentary was done by F. Stearns Slaughter in 1902, 12 years after it was started. And he said he was a local planter who wrote of the Botanic Gardens. He said, "The good taste displayed in its arrangement and the scrupulous care bestowed on it rendered this suburban resort a most attractive one, and a diligent curator has, in this respect, also deserved well of all lovers of the picturesque. It is not vast like the Prater of Vienna, nor gorgeously ornate like Battersea Park, but ours is indisputably the most charming recreation ground in the West Indies, not excepting the beautiful tented gardens of Georgetown, Demerara." This was in 1902. The next one was written in 1907 by Aspinall. "The Botanic Gardens is without a doubt the chief attraction of Roseau. Established in 1891, it is picturesquely situated at the foot of the precipitous Bruce and occupies 40 acres of what was previously Bath Estate, which adjoins it. The gardens is the most luxuriant and beautiful of its kind in the West Indies. It contains specimens of almost every known variety of tropical plants, both economic and ornamental." So you see both of them so far have spoken about the fact that it was the most beautiful in the West Indies. So that itself should give us, should put us in that state of mind to make us, see that we do have a gem that we need to conserve, preserve, and enhance. The third one was written in 1932 by a man called Van Dyke. He was a traveler in the Caribbean and wrote in 1932. "Bath from the little port town of Roseau, there is a botanic gardens that is more than interesting. Even if you go there at twilight, when it is too late to study the trees, and sit on a bench at the side of the cricket field as the moon comes up, you may get some idea of the stillness, serenity, and beauty of a tropical night. It is impressive, emotional, highly romantic. It is a romance of nature and is simply beautiful without consciousness of thought. You dream dreams and you are very happy and contented. Dominica seems a paradise by day or night, and you wish your dream might know no waking. So, and a lot of us, when we sit in the botanical gardens, we still get that nostalgic feeling. And this fourth one, the last one I read, it was done, and it's so interesting that tree, you see, there still exists. In 1950, Fulmer, who had traveled throughout Europe and the West Indies, describes the gardens as follows. A shady road running along a wall like that of an English park led out of the town for about half a mile in the direction of the hills, and a gate opened into the most beautiful botanical gardens I have ever seen. Lawns are perfect as the most ancient and august in England, rolled in gentle slopes shaded by clumps of enormous and for me still unknown trees, except for another banyan under whose convolution I lay for an hour or two. Next to it is a huge cannonball tree, every now and then loose off its ammunition and fell with a dull thud upon the grass. So can you imagine that this cannon tree, which exists, must be over 100 years old? So these are the four different commentary I felt that I needed to bring forward. They are all on the DAS website, on the www.Dominica Gardens. So if you go on das.com, you'll get it. And the whole intent is to set the stage for what is to come now. So right now, I'll hand over to Mr. Urban Mate, who will now get into the real meat of what's going on and explain to us everything about the proposals, those from the past, and what we are proposing now. Mr. Mate is a plant protection specialist, or he worked as a plant protection specialist in the government of Dominica, and also was IICA office coordinator. That means Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture. So we welcome Mr. Mate. I must tell you also that Mr. Mate is the chairman of Friends of the Botanic Gardens. He's leading this whole thing. Good
evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And a couple of things happened last year that sort of catalyzed the getting together of a diverse group of people who had a similar aspiration concerning the future of the botanical gardens. We wanted to see the botanical gardens restored to its original splendor. The first thing that happened was that the Department of Agriculture relocated from the botanical gardens, and that action opened up a lot of space, new space, and new facilities that can be used to further enhance the botanical gardens. So the movement of the Department of Agriculture from the botanical gardens creates an opportunity for us to use that space to help improve the botanical gardens. So that was the first thing that happened, that sort of brought the juices to it. The second thing that happened was that the government of Botanical got access to funding from the government of Saudi Arabia for the improvement of Roseau, and that includes the botanical gardens, which is part of Roseau. So that presented an opportunity for funding. for doing something about the botanical gardens. So these two events, I think, were really the catalysts that got this diverse group of people to get together and talk about renovation, fixing up of the botanical gardens. So the goal, as I see it, of the Friends of the Botanical Gardens really is to enhance the botanical gardens, bring it back to splendor, bring it back to being the best botanical gardens in the West Indies. That is, to me, the overall goal of the group. But we have two sub-objectives, and the first one was, following our first meeting, to do some research and literature review to find out what has been done in terms of reports and studies about the botanical gardens. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if somebody has already done some work, then the best thing to do is to use their work and alter it as it were. So our first objective was to do some research, find out what had been done for the gardens, and start putting this information together. The second objective was really to make an approach to the government through the representative for Roseau Central, in whose constituency the Botanical Gardens fell. Because I feel that if we're going to get anything done, we have to do it with the help of the government. We cannot do it on our own because we haven't got the funds to do it. Even if somebody gave us $2 million tonight and say, yo guys, there's $2 million, do something in the gardens, we still can't do it. We need to work with the government on that project. So we did have a meeting, an appointment to meet with Honorable Melissa Skelly. But that meeting got postponed because of Parliament, and then Christmas, and then New Year's, and the opening of Carnival. However, I'm pleased to announce that we have a new appointment to meet with Mrs. Skelly on Friday. So at that meeting, we will be appraising her of what it is we're doing, what it is we're about, what are the ideas we have, and try to get from her what are her ideas and her plans and so on, and see whether we can find some way of working together on getting something done with the botanical gardens. Because folks, we cannot do it on our own. As much as we would like to, we need to work together. All right, so in my research on the studies that have been done on the botanical gardens, I came up, there were 5 studies done on the botanical gardens over the last 20 years. The first one of these was done in 2001, and it is called the Roseau Botanical Gardens Peripheral Link Project. And that was done by a gentleman called Kim Thurlow of Yale University. Now, his main point of view of his report was that the gardens is an integral part of Roseau. So you cannot fix one without fixing the other. So if you're going to fix Roseau, you must fix the botanical gardens. If you're going to fix the botanical gardens, you must fix Roseau, because they're one. That is his point. The other main recommendation that came out of his study was that he wanted to develop a historical district in Roseau and educate the residents about historical architecture. They wanted also to restore the riverbank, and that is from the river mouth all the way up to the bridge by the stadium. So that was one of his recommendations. And the third recommendation was to restore the botanical gardens and develop exhibits and educational opportunities for tourists, local residents, and school children. So he wanted to add an educational aspect to the botanical gardens. Okay, so that was the first report that was done in 2001. In 2004, there was another report done in which Lennox Honeytree was involved, and that was called the Roseau Link Botanic Gardens Project. And again, the main recommendations coming out of that report was that there should be a lot of replanting of trees in the gardens, because over the years, hurricanes and time have destroyed trees, and trees are not replaced and replanted. Trees need to be relabeled, because there are lots of trees and people walk around and nobody knows the names of the trees because they're not labeled. The other recommendation coming out of that report is that there need to be more public conveniences in the botanical gardens. They recommended that there should be a children's playground located within the botanical gardens. They also recommended that there should be a jogging trail established to walk around the perimeter of the botanical gardens. And the final main recommendation from that report was that they should establish a visitor center, so people who come to the gardens could go to that center and get information about the gardens. So that was the report of 2004. In 2006, there was another consultancy done by a company called Scribal Consultancy Services and Historical Tours of St. Lucia. 2006. And they produced a master plan for the Roseau Botanical Gardens. And that report was presented to the government in September of 2006. Again, the main recommendations coming out of that report was the re-establishment of the economic section of the gardens. That is the section of the gardens that produced plants for sale. So they said that they needed to, that section of the gardens needed to be re-established so people could go and purchase plants. They also mentioned in that report that they need to re-establish the lily pond. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember that there used to be a pond, a big pond at the back of the gardens, close to where the ruins of the Produce Chemist Valleys. There was a pond there. I remember a pond there. As a boy, they said if you fell in that pond, you would come up with the boat of channel. So I was always terrified of that pond. And there were a couple small lily ponds by the forestry officers as well. You know? So, but, you know, from the Gezi land of river and water, we don't have any water features in the gardens. They also recommended the relocation of the buildings in the garden. I think they refer to the Botanical agriculture. That has not happened, so they have been relocated. They recommended the provision of parking facilities within the botanical gardens. So when people come to visit the garden, there should be somewhere for people to park and not park on the road. Again, they mentioned a visitor center to provide information and guidance to people visiting the gardens. They mentioned the need for a cafeteria, a small cafeteria, a coffee shop within the botanical gardens. So again, visitors and locals could go and sit and have a cup of coffee and a baked and solution, a baked and hammer salt. And a gift shop. They recommended a gift shop, a souvenir shop within the botanical gardens. And again, they recommended additional washrooms in the botanical gardens. So these were the main recommendations coming out of that Scribner report of 2006. Now, around 2010, I'm not so sure of the year, but around that time, maybe Colin may be able to help me. Dr. Clinton Shillingford and Dr. Jameson Shillingford, they produced a very comprehensive report on the future developments of the botanical gardens. And they have a long list of recommendations. But that report is the most comprehensive of all the reports. And again, they advocated for the replanting of the trees. A lot of trees have died. Fortunately, we have a record of all the original trees that were in the gardens. So these trees could be sourced from wherever, because the record of all the trees are still here. They also mentioned about there being restoring the balance between trees and lawn. Again, I don't know how many of you remember, when I was young, there was more trees than lawn in the gardens. Now there's more lawn than trees in the gardens. So things have changed. So they recommend a better balance of trees and lawn. Again, they recommend tagging and labeling of trees, rehabilitation of Jacksonville. I know some work on Jacksonville was done. But again, they recommend rehabilitation of the Jacksonville and the other park called Lovers Lane. I don't know whether that park is still operable. But I haven't been on that park for a long time. Then they recommended establishment of various gardens like Heliconia Gardens, Plumeria Gardens, Rose Gardens, Anthurium Gardens, and Orchid House. These are all things to enhance the experience of coming into the gardens. You know, they recommended the establishment of an irrigation system within the gardens. I know one was set up some years ago. I don't know how operational it is right now. They recommended that the gardens be used for more educational things, having lectures and demonstrations of various agricultural stuff within the gardens. School visits to the gardens, where these children could learn about the various plants and trees and flora and fauna of Botanical. They also recommended having a medicinal plant garden. We're always talking about how good we are with medicinal plants. Most Dominicans don't know what the average medicinal plant looks like. So we need to have a museum of all the medicinal plants. You could come and see what civic potpot looks like and devil's bush looks like. Well, you hear about these things, but a lot of times you don't even know what they look like. You know? So they also recommended a wildlife sanctuary. Well, we had a semblance of one before the hurricane, where we had some manacles and snakes and so on. But having like a small wildlife sanctuary, again, the children could come and see what wildlife looks like, you know. Big thing, they recommended reducing the traffic flow through the gardens. And their recommendation was to build a ring road, what I call it, the road passing on the back and coming out around the other end of the garden. So to cut down the traffic road and driving through the gardens. Again, they recommended a parking lot, because you come to the gardens, you have to have somewhere to park. So if you come to spend 2-3 hours in the gardens with your children, you have to park the car somewhere. So there should be a parking lot somewhere in the gardens. All right? Again, they recommended to clear the gardens of all offices other than those related to the gardens. Well, that has not happened. You know, again, a visitor center, information center. You can see that all the reports are coming up with more or less the same sort of recommendations. They also recommended rehabilitating the military cemetery at Mount Bruce. Now, I can't remember where exactly that is. I'm sure it's surrounded by houses. I know it's a criticism somewhere, but I'm not even sure how recognizable it is as a cemetery. It's wonderful. Now, in terms of organization and administration of the botanical gardens, they recognize the need to appoint a curator for the gardens. Now, a curator is just not a manager. A curator is somebody who is trained in plants and knows about plants, what plant to plant, how to plant it, where to plant it, how to take care of plants. That's what a curator is. He's not just a manager. So for a botanical gardens, you need a curator to manage your botanical gardens. And they said there should be some sort of management authority for the gardens. They didn't specify it, but they said that there needs to be some sort of body running the gardens, managing the gardens, what happens in the gardens, what doesn't happen in the gardens, and that sort of thing. Making rules and regulations concerning the use of the gardens and that sort of stuff. So that was the report of 2010. Now in 2018, there was another report. A committee to review and plan the restoration and upgrade of the botanical garden was appointed. And I think on that committee, there were people like, I think Leonard Sonishud was on that committee, and Rupert Sorrell was also on that committee. Now, they did a lot of work. I think they came up again with a good report that was presented to the government. And one of their first recommendations was the link road. There needs to be a road to take the traffic out of the center of the gardens. Similar to this. And they came up with a similar sort of link road passing on the monuments and coming out by the cemetery. Because they all recognize the need to get the traffic out of the botanical gardens. They recommended a car park. Everybody recommends a car park. The children's playground. There need to be water features in the garden. How can we be the land of 365 rivers and there's not one fountain in the gardens? The garden should have 3, 4, 5 fountains all over the place. Ponds with fish and flowers and water plants. So we're the land of water. So water features. They recommended again an exercise track around the gardens. Keep fit. That fits in with the whole idea of the botanical gardens. They recommended an aviary. Where you can go see various birds, and you can have a lot of birds. And then you can import exotic birds so people come and buy what birds are like. You know? So they also recommended that the main lawn, the main cricket lawn, be improved and maintained as a cricket ground. Because cricket is a traditional part of the botanical gardens. That is where big matches took place, big tournaments took place in the botanical gardens. All big names played in the botanical gardens. So we need to maintain that link with sports and cricket in the botanical gardens. So they recommend that main lawn be maintained as a cricket ground. They also recommended that somewhere in the gardens an open amphitheater be set up to have some cultural events in the gardens. It's a nice ambience, a nice place to have a little concert, a little recital, or something like that. So, something to think about. More exotic plants and more exotic trees, more palms. I mean, we have so many palms in the garden. Over time, they have died and fallen and not been replaced. They recommended an orchid house again. And again, they recommended that there must be some system of management for the botanical garden. The botanical garden must have somebody managing what happens in the botanical gardens. They mentioned additional public convenience and an interpretation center. So you see, all these reports are coming up with more or less the same kind of recommendations. And finally, I come to my good friend Paul Wimboli. we came up with a marvelous plan. Now, if you do already doesn't look very small. Already is a big thing. Our Wind's plan is to have a waterfall coming down from the top of Mount Bruce, cascading down the side of Mount Bruce, and falling into a huge artificial lake at the bottom, at the back of the gardens. A lake big enough that you could go on a little boat and row across the lake. The lake would have swans, would have turtles, would have fish, would have flower plants, and on the banks of the lake, you would have a little cafeteria, you would have an abstract culture building. Now, you may say, whoa, that kind of something huge. But let me tell you something, that is something that we must keep on the desk, but that must remain on the table. So whatever we do, especially when it comes to building the road, we have to build the road. We have to remind the engineers, maybe 2-3 years down the road, we're going to have a waterfall coming down there. So you need to construct the road and make 2 big culverts under the road so the water can pass and go into the lake that we're going to build 5 years long. You understand? So it's fantastic. Think about it. Cruise ships coming into roads, so the first thing they're going to see is this waterfall coming down from mountains. As they get off the boat, everybody's going to head straight to that waterfall. Okay, so these are the 5 reports that were done over the last 20 years on enhancing and improving the botanical gardens. And as you can see from the recommendations, that they all essentially recommending the same thing. All right? Now, we also, but there are new things that can be added, and I want to mention the ring road. The 2 reports that we mentioned that spoke about the ring road, they had the ring road passing behind the cemetery and somewhere by the lodge building, coming out somewhere at the bottom of the Mount Bruce. I think this is a little, that might take some doing, but people don't like people to play with the dead, you understand? So my recommendation is that the road comes out in the same Bath Road gate, go around the back, and you come out in the same Bath Road entrance. So you have when you're approaching that entrance, you have a left lane. If you go down to the New Town, you go into the lane, and you swing left, you go to the New Town. If you're going to go into Rose or right, you go to another lane. You swing right, you go into Rose, and then you have the entrance for vehicles coming into the gardens. So I think that would be an easier and cheaper and less controversial exit for the ring road around the gardens. So that is the first thing I would like to mention. Also, again, the engineers, when they're surveying for the road and so on, they have to look at the entrance to Jack's Walk, because that road is going to pass very close to the entrance of Jack's Walk. It's also going to pass very close to 45 steps. So the engineers have to do some work to align the road in such a way that the entrance to Jack's Walk on the 35 steps are not too impeded by the road. And they have to work out how we're going to access it. But we need the road because we have to get the traffic out of the center of the botanical gardens. The other thing is that if we're going to use the Bath Road entrance as the main vehicular entrance of the botanical gardens, we think that we're going to need a new main entrance for the botanical gardens. And we think that that section of the botanical gardens between the Convent High School and what is now the National Pest Center, that space there, I think that is a little used section of the botanical gardens. And I think it might be a good idea create an entrance there, a nice proper entrance on the wall, and use that whole section between the convent and the National Place as a car park. So you enter the gardens through that gate, you park your car there, and you walk into the gardens. You come to pick up your children at convent, you enter there, you park your car there, you pick up your children there, and you move out as well. So it's a huge space that can hold quite a few cars. And as I say, it is not an often used part of the botanical gardens. So if we're going to have to sacrifice a piece of the gardens to put a car park, which we need, then I think that section needs to be looked at as a possible area for a car park. Because I don't think it will affect too much the ambience of the rest of the botanical gardens, because it's right at the boundary, and it could be nicely landscaped and so on to fit in. Maintain some of the big trees that are there, so that it doesn't just look like a slab of concrete, you know. So, a couple other features that we can consider, and I want to maintain, is we need to put in a small Kalinago village in the botanical gardens. The vast majority of visitors, and I'm sure the vast majority of resident Dominicans have not visited the Kalinago village in the Kalinago territory. It's a long drive for the tourists, and even for the locals, they only go there if they have a visitor who wants to see it, and they take the visitor. But imagine if we had a little Kalinago village in the botanical gardens. What a thing that would be for the visitors. You have a cabe, a stage, you would have cultural performances in there. And that cabe would also serve as a meeting spot. If you walk in any garden and a shower of rain starts to fall, where do you go to shelter? You go to the cabe to shelter. If the sun is too hot and you feel it, now around the cabe, you would set up a number of ajupas. Ajupas are the smaller huts. And in these huts, you would have carrying craft. You have some of the Kalinago people actually making their baskets and their various crafts and selling them to the public. And also you would opportunity also for the Kalinago to come up with some innovative ways that they can sell their traditional foods. Find out we are making whatever the Kalinago, but it's traditional Kalinago. Cassava cakes and cassava bakes and something like that. So these could be done right there within that little Kalinago village in the botanical. I think it would be a wonderful attraction, both for the local residents and for the visitors. And it would fit in with the ambience of the botanical gardens. Okay, so as you go through the slides, you see a mini zoo. We mentioned a couple of the authors mentioned the need to set up a mini zoo in the botanical gardens. And I think that is a wonderful idea. We had a little one before the hurricane. We need to set it up again and expand it. Okay?
Yeah, the other one was the
we spoke about water features. We need fountains in the botanical gardens. I mean, because we're talking about land of rivers and water, we have about fountains. You know? So,
talk about the rivers.
Oh yeah. Well,
these are not from your research on the proposals we see. These are additions.
Two of the proposals mentioned the need for water features. So this is just an example of what water features we could consider. Fountains are the simplest thing. And ponds, with fish and water lilies and so on. So it's just to give an idea. But Davian came up with this idea that the old river Deuce intake pipeline from Pambo is still running along the Emsall Road and somewhere through the garden somewhere. And maybe a way could be formed to rehabilitate that line to provide water for all these water features. I don't know, it's something to look at because that line is still there.
Probably not access to water.
Huh?
Probably not access to water.
Well, I don't know. But the thing is that, and water is not far, the river is not far, but water should not be a problem. You understand? But it's just a suggestion and something to look at. All right? Butterfly house. Part of the aviary could be a butterfly house. We did a nice, huge aquarium in the botanical gardens. You understand? We need to put things that are going to excite the people and the children.
I really love the idea about doing this whole Calinando village because right now I notice there's a tent selling the same stuff they sell on the bayfront. You know, all the Chinese stuff written Dominic on it, that's what they're selling in the gardens right now. For real, there's a tent over there right by past the house. Who did that?
Okay.
Come on.
So anyway, yes, sorry, go ahead.
If we can capture all our jackals and our
Yes.
birds, we call them our
We have
Sicilian parrots.
Yeah.
Now, and have a big field in botanical garden. That would be beautiful.
And we have lots of hummingbirds and siki and
All that.
all that kind of thing. A lot of children don't even know what is going on, but they don't see them. Okay, so to end, I want to make an appeal to the young people to come forward and get involved. Not only with this activity, but the other activities. But we're here now, let me talk about the Friends of the Botanic Gardens. I wish we had some more young people. People in their 20s, their 40s, their 40s. You understand? Because that will give me a sense of hope that this thing is going to continue. You understand? If we had some young people, see, standing where I'm standing there, should be a 30-year-old young man or young woman. And I would feel so good that these young people really, I have hope for when I'm dead, I'm going to know this thing is still going to continue.
Yeah.
So we need to encourage some young people to get involved and come on board. Because right now, I should be sitting in my porch listening to oldie golds and drinking of the same coconut. You understand? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
In terms of the project that you presented, there's a critical project that we need to record as we go forward with the garden development. And that was in the 1950s, on one kid down from Cuba, Mr. Fan.
I remember.
And that is when the gardens they were thinking of upgrading gardens. Fanny's approach for it was to destroy all the economic section of the gardens, to create a lake. So you see the water features seem to be strong in all the proposals. So I just wanted to put this in there, in the Farley proposal for this lake, which ties up perhaps with the water features you talk, ties up with the waterfalls and things of that sort.
But I think the economic thing, in my view of the economic section of the book is a population producing flower plants, not mangoes and avocados and citrus.
Well, some people want to see that, but
so that it's a source of income for whoever's managing the botanical garden. People go there and buy flower plants and so on. Or even you could even make some small dried flowers to make souvenirs using dried flowers and so on. Something really local.
Exactly.
So when the tourists come there, they can buy something that is really unique. A nice dried flower on a nice, representing a nice card and so on. Wonderful.
But that does not get lost
Yeah.
with all of these things because it's only 50 acres you have in there.
We have to go one step at a time. That is why I said, for now, we have two objectives.
That's into that space.
Yeah. Let us get through our first two objectives and then we move on from there.
Correct.
Yes.
But it's just we mention all these things to get people excited, to get them saying, yo, we really need to get this gardens going again. You understand? We really want to get people excited about it. You know, and that's really good. So, yeah. We probably have some more questions. Time for meeting at the end.
Just a comment. I know just like the last time you mentioned the whole idea of getting young people involved, and something just crossed my mind. I think one of the vehicles we could approach is the science teachers in the secondary schools and those at the college. If they can understand that the rehabilitated garden would be an effective regular laboratory, you could get the teachers on board as well as the students for their science clubs. Because I think that's I'm sure Carol will agree with that.
But if you remember, at least two of the reports mention this thing about having lectures for students and for visitors on various aspects of agriculture and horticulture and flora and fauna. So that would fit in nicely with what you're suggesting now.
Yeah.
You know?
But in the past, the schools use the gardens as well.
But they use it to walk around and see different
No,
things.
for training when we did botany classes.
Yeah.
You might have to go to the gardens to identify the different species and so on. So it had that function.
Yeah. And you can still use it for that.
Sure.
In today's science curriculum.
Thank you again, my people.
All right, thanks.
Okay, now, thank you, Mr. Mate. We'll now go straight into the next presentation by David Shillingford. Most of you all know he's a former manager of the WASCO and the St. Lucian Company.
No, that's other places I go
All right.
Good evening, everyone. All people who know me can know me as a connoisseur of West Indian food. Since probably for as much as 10 years, from 2009, I ran the E-show, meaning It's Salt, Joke Shack, and I still get bothered about when I open it up again, but that's not going to happen. Anyway, okay. As Mr. Martin mentioned, in at least 2 or 3 of the papers that were presented, the works that were presented on the Botanical Gardens talked about the management aspect of it. And when we had the meeting of concerned citizens of the Botanical Gardens here, it was suggested that we look at some type of mechanism to deal with the management, and hopefully it would incorporate civil society. And I was asked to do some research on it. A lot of the people present knew of the St. Lucia National Trust, and they are the entity in St. Lucia that manages the Pigeon Island, the famous Pigeon Island for the jazz festivals and other properties in St. Lucia. So I took that responsibility, and I was fortunate, whilst doing my initial research on the internet, to discover that the Organization of American States, they did a study. They have a project titled Expanding the socio-economic potential of cultural heritage in the Caribbean. And one of the outputs of that was a regional standard for protective, for protective heritage legislation. So that document, I collected it, and it gave me a lot of insight into what was happening throughout the Caribbean with respect to organizations that took care of the preservation, conservation, and management of heritage sites, buildings, and what have you, dealing with culture and the matter. So I use that basically to guide me as much as possible. And in the English-speaking Caribbean islands, and probably in the whole of the Commonwealth, the entities that deal with heritage preservation management, and they all come under, they call them national trusts. You know, you have a Trinidad National Trust, you have a St. Lucia, you have Barbados, you have St. Christopher, you have Jamaica, and so it's something that it's common in the Caribbean already. In fact, in 1983, there was a national trust legislation, a bill for Dominica. I have tried putting my hands on it. I've called the Printry many times, I'm still waiting on them to call me back. It was suggested to me that I should probably go to the Parliament building. Because of the holidays and everything, I haven't done that yet, but it's my intention to put my hands on it, because probably it was a very good document that probably just needs modernizing for us to move forward. Now, of the trusts in the Caribbean, I did a pretty detailed review of the Trinidad and Tobago one, the Grenada, Barbados, St. Lucia, and St. Christopher. They don't refer to it as St. Kitts and Nevis, because Nevis has their own probably a department that deals with matters of that, and hence St. Kitts is also known as St. Christopher, so it's St. Christopher National Trust. Now, I know that there are basically three types of trust in its structure. One really is not referred to as a trust, it's where it is a government department or an institute. That's what they have in Belize. It's government funded, it's an institute. There's very little public participation in that trust. Then there is the Trinidad example, which is a statutory body. And the minister is involved in a lot of decision-making. Recommendations are made to the minister for him to make. But it also provides for public participation. So there's memberships. You can become a member of the trust and you can participate in meetings your involvement is there. But in the end, it's a government institution and it follows the typical principles that govern statutory bodies and government. Then there is an NGO. An example of that is the Barbados National Trust. It's private. It's private. They were fortunate that they had a few benefactors that bought the cave system. I can't remember the name now. But there's this very popular, famous cave in Barbados, Harrison's Cave. That was bought by an individual and some of the properties. And they have developed it and they have managed it. And it's a non-profit. And they're doing such a good job at it that the government has passed on properties for them to manage. They control Welshman Gully, which on the side I found out that is where the grapefruit originated from. I didn't realize that Barbados was a producer of citrus. At least they claim it, and that's something that they sell to the tourists, because as you know, grapefruit is a very popular fruit worldwide. So that one is, Barbados is private. Then you have St. Lucia, which it's somewhat private, but they depend on the government to do a whole bunch of things, because they have very little, besides hosting the jazz festival, their resources come from fundraisers, membership, and subventions from government and things like that. But it's the examples that I've given so far, they all deal with the, how can I call it, tangible assets. They deal with architectural buildings, they deal with parks. These are the things that you can touch, land-based things. St. Kitts now, it's similar to St. Lucia in that, well, it's different from St. Lucia, it's a hybrid. There is government participation, there is public participation. Government's participation, you really notice it in that government appoints 2 or 3 people on the board of directors. And I would state that they're not in the majority. I don't know if that is for plus or for the minus. But then all other members on the board come from the membership of the organization. And the St. Kitts, the St. Christopher model is, they deal with the intangible stuff, music, dance, paintings, pictures, video, the whole gambit. And when I researched all of these 4 models, I felt, and I recommended to the small subgroup, that we should use the St. Kitts version model as the template to develop a national trust for Dominica. So that's my recommendation to use the St. Kitts template. Now, what would be the objects? And that's the most important thing. What are the object of the trust? And I have a list here that I'll read out. The proposed objects of the trust are: A, engage in the protection, preservation, restoration of and interpretation of buildings, objects, monuments of architectural, historical, or artistic interest in Dominica. Promote the protection, conservation, interpretation, and enhancements of the natural environment of Dominica, including its animal and plant life, its submarine and subterranean areas, and other places of natural and historical interest and beauty. Assist in the preservation of traditional arts, crafts, dance, song, language, and other forms of expression. Assist in the identification, compilation and preservation of manuscripts and photographic records, books and works of art, and other forms of identifiable memorabilia for the benefit and enjoyment of the people of the community, to promote the heritage of Dominica through the production of written, audiovisual, electronic, and other appropriate materials, foster cooperation with persons, associations, and other entities having similar objects, provide a forum for the exchange of ideas, information, and knowledge, acquire property for the furtherance of the aims and objects of the Trust, present and interpret the cultural heritage of Dominica by means of museum displays and exhibits and other relevant productions, attract funds by means of subscriptions, donations, bequests, grants, technical assistance, and other means for the execution of any or all of the objects of the Trust, encourage the vesting of property in the Trust for the purpose of furthering the objects of the Trust, administer property vested in the Trust in furtherance and achievement of the objects of the Trust. Now, this here is very broad. It's very broad. And it goes well beyond what we're talking about here, the Botanical Gardens. It's not for me to decide, but all the things that I have mentioned there as objects are things that are needed in Dominica. Well, consider having a broad body that can undertake that, that can undertake all these activities in Dominica, and have it fall under a civil service organization. So that's something that has to be ironed out at some point in time. But with the objects as is, it would allow definitely for an entity like that, if it's acceptable, because it has to be passed by law. Government has to be involved in establishing that. If it's acceptable, it can in fact go and provide the services of the management of the botanical gardens and things like that. So it in fact will take care, will be able to take care of the botanical gardens. Now, the trust, as I said, is going to have members, people who subscribe. That would be a means of getting funds. Of course, in the other islands where you have membership, it's a very small amount, basically, to get a wide cross-section of society being members. They have corporate memberships. The membership for individuals are not only for nationals home and abroad, but also residents. And so the membership has to be defined. And of course, there would be elections and a board of directors that would be elected to run the affairs and have oversight of a national trust. So this model, it has 4 officers, which is basically the president, vice president, secretary, and a treasurer, and you have 3 government appointments, and that's basically by ministries: tourism, agriculture, and I believe the 3rd one was culture or heritage. And then you had a representative from the business sector in Dominica, that would probably be DIC, or one of the business forums, and 2 other persons from the membership that would be appointed. So generally, that is in the essence of what a national trust would look like. There's much more work to do on that, but I'm not a lawyer, so someone would have to go through review existing legislation to see, because the existing legislation, if they're not repealed, then this year cannot supersede them. So we have to make sure that they complement one another. And of course, putting it in the legal jargon that you put realism and the rest. So this is the extent of the research that I have done. I intend to go further and elaborate on the sections and also the rules, things like how elections take place and how a person can be removed, how a person becomes a member, things like that. I still want to do some research and put it together in a document that will be easy for whoever takes it to the further step. The next step will have as much background information in it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's my contribution so far. I hope everyone understood it, and if there's any questions, I guess we'll have a forum after, so people can
ask you right.
Okay, well, go ahead. Any questions you may have? Okay, that's good.
Thank you to Mr. Shillingford for this very detailed and in-depth presentation. We'll just go straight into the final presentation. Follow Mr. Mihanti to the presentation.
Just trying to remember why I put so many security codes on my IT while you were alone. I want to really have just not an in-depth discussion, because I spent a lot of time on this botanical gardens issue. And I will complete at the end. And I hope you'll understand. First of all, thank you for inviting me over here to make a little contribution. That I cannot take direct questions on the botanical gardens. I'll explain why after I have finished. Now, I guess most people here assume that we're planning for something that hasn't happened yet, right? Is that fair? Do everyone think that the botanical gardens are the same as it had been, say, for the past 2 years? Most people think that's the case. No? The sofa? No? No? Well, I think they have taken the gardens already. I like it. This government has already taken the gardens. So we're trying to catch up. Beg your pardon? Did you all see the garden is already taken. The airport is taken. The wetlands in Portsmouth and Cabot National Park is taken. Did you all get any notice they were going to take it? Did they say we will invite a company from China, having bought and sold passports the proceeds of which never arrive here. There is no purview of Parliament to examine, count, assess, analyze the patterns of funds or income that is raised from passport sales. That doesn't happen here. Does anybody know how much money a passport is sold for? There's no set price. And more importantly, none of that money comes here. And so ridiculous that we are, as a nation, European Union countries are telling us that we have no control of the passport sales. So that's why I'm telling you all, right? As far as I'm concerned, what I can see, the gardens have been taken. The same way I reported some years ago to the people from Woodford Hill and Wesley, that the land, their land, had already been taken. That's the problem we have. So I will explain briefly in terms of my, because I think that, like everybody else, have their own ideas of what the garden should be. But this garden was the finest that we had in the region. And I think that we need to make sure that we balance having a theme park as gardens or a green space without some of the construction that we wish to make in this special place. I remember I used to come here as a little boy from St. Joseph when I was going to, that's why I went to school. And it was a big thing for us. You know, they got these buses for us to come up and so on. And it was all about the plants, the flowers. And as they explained to us, the different trees, and then we had a test a few days later, if we remember what they told us when they were there. So I think the green space is very different than a theme park. Even the issue of saying that you wish to have a water feature, I'd say be careful with that. Not too far from the government buildings in St. Lucia, there is a park, and it's a huge water feature. It's never cleaned. It always smells. And we have a very bad regular behavior of not maintaining anything. So if we have water feature, it's going to smell. It's going to smell. And it's going to be a center for probably disease. I just want to do two things. First, talk about the protected areas. The protected areas, and then look at the history of how this government and some other governments have treated these protected areas, of which the gardens is one of them. And then I'll talk about the particularities of the gardens, how it arrives at the gardens, and whether or not there's any legal, historical developments that may support some of what I'm going to say. And we can have a brief discussion, but I cannot answer direct questions. And partly it's because while you are sitting here, I'm preparing to go to court. They've taken the gardens. My next option is to get it back. And most likely it will have to end up in court. So I'm really not interested in talking anymore. I'm interested in action. We do a hell of a lot of talking in this country, and we don't do a lot of action to take back what anybody can take from us. And what people figure out about Dominican, you can push them as much as you want, just do it slowly. If they came, like we're all expecting a big, announcement on Tuesday on the 4th of February, we're going to take over the garden. That's what we're expecting. But if you steal the garden, you move all the parts out of it, out of here. You make it a place that's uncomfortable for people to come and just relax and enjoy themselves. Then you go and you pay somebody, a consultant, to prepare an elaborate plan of what you want to put in the garden. Bowling alley, Chinese pagoda, not African or Kalinagoy, Chinese pagoda, structures that have nothing to do with our culture, or even our slave history comes from completely out of the scope of our cultural heritage and history. That's what's planned for the garden. That's why I say to you, you're taking it. If you could tell me or show me that they have not taken it, then we can talk. But let me just go into a few things. Now, you have the it's called National Parks and Protected Areas Act. I think it's 4202, chapter 4202. And I'll tell you two things here. You have the first, just after the explanation, the preambles, you have what a protected area is. It explains that very neatly. But that national parks, what it sought to do, if I just give you a generalization, because I know you're not lawyers, and lawyers have a very bad name in this country because they facilitate most of the nastiness, the crookedness, the corruption in the country. Lawyers do it. So lawyers have a bad name, unfortunately. So I don't like to be a lawyer most of the time. I just have to have a law degree and I practice law sometimes. But so the protected areas, you have the north, the south, the east. You have the southeast. Then you have, at the very bottom, you have Capritz National Park. And Capritz National Park is a very interesting place because it has most of the other protected areas, almost all of them, involve land, mountains, and so on. Various features in the country. But the Capritz National Park involves the wetland area, which is an area where birds nest, birds rest, and birds feed. That's what wetlands are. But the wetland is a very important place in that the natural features of the area, the land, elevation, and so on, and the porous nature of the soil in the area allows a natural phenomenon to take place in the wetlands, and that is a mixing of just the right amount of salt with the right amount of fresh water to create something called brackish water. And that allows certain species of mangroves to grow. Now, most of the Caribbean have lots of mangroves. We have very few. And if anybody's in the Portsmouth area, you can go up 1 mile, go down the road just before the Chinese took over that farm there, just go all the way down there, you'll see one of the nicest mangroves. When you go further up, after you pass the destruction just committed by the Chinese in this pursuit of looking for tariffs for this new airport, you will see mangroves as you leave the village and so that just before Bends, you'll see a nice mangrove there. In fact, if you go further up, you will see that the trees are buttressed and standing in the water. The one just before, at the base of the Atlantic Hotel, have already been cut. And they are now taking soil and they're actually packing it. So what is eventually will happen, and the reason why I'm saying that is that I'm collecting wood for my other fight in the airport. And part of that is the water damage in that area. Because once you get rid of the mangrove, there's no regulation of the water level in the area. So you're going to have the flooding. The hotel itself is going to be at risk, because when I was a kid, I used to see lots of parish and packs of the hill dropping on a regular basis when there's normally dry season for a good while. And then you have some heavy rain, and then the areas which collapse. So now you don't have that regulation that the mangroves would have provided. Although it's very difficult to mangrove, because once there's water supply, they will keep trying to grow. So there's a brackish water business going on and so that, as there is in the base of the Caribbean National Park. But the Caribbean National Park also has land, and it has a marine section, because you have 1,300, I think, of 1,313 acres of ocean. And now Kaplinski, or what is called now, Continental, sits in the middle of that. So they took, I think, 15 acres, and they were only able to do that because the National Parks and Protected Areas Act allows you to increase the size of a protected national park but it does not allow you to decrease it. So what the government did is that they instructed a consultant to change the feature to allow them to actually reduce or increase the size of the national park. That's why 15 acres of Cabrit's National Park became the home for the Moroccan Hotel and the Kaplinski Continental Hotel. So the only problem we don't know is that, we know that there are large artificial pools that were part of the development of that hotel. Now, these kinds of features normally require a lot of chemicals to clean them, to keep the level neutral so that no algae grows in them and so on. I know a little about that because when we learned to dive in the UK, we dived in a pool because it was controlled features. So I know some of those things, and depending on how many days the pool had been cleaned, we were not able to dive in them. Which is strange, you can swim, but you're not able to dive in them because of problems when you go down 20 meters or 5 meters or whatever it is in the deep parts of the pool. So we don't know what chemicals are being used, what arrangements are made to drain the pools when they're doing so, and if there's any residual damage to the sea life close by. We know that the fishermen don't fish there anymore. We know that. Why, we don't know, but they don't fish there like they used to before. So there is something going on in the front of the hotel where you would have expected the transfer of the creation of the brackish water, the absorption of the salt water mixing with the fresh water. So we don't know for sure. The hotel is interesting because it's built with, and I went to see it myself, it's built on the swamp. The swamp is filled as much as they could. Because it's still not a solid base, they then put a series of pipes, and then they built a foundation of the pipes, they drove the pipes down, put a foundation of pipes, and put a concrete apron, then built the hotel on top of it. So that's what, and they assume that the engineers have confirmed that it will stay there, it shouldn't sink, and so on. Although I know that area is an area that sinks, so the whole of Tatan going all the way back into Portsmouth by the river sinks. And regardless of what they tell you, it will probably sink. Levels we don't know. I'm not an engineer, so I cannot go back and give you any details on that. But what's important is that all of the areas to which are protected areas have been interfered with. So it's not like a holy grail where it's protected. In the UK, you cannot, when the airport attempted to build Terminal 5, it went on for years. Consultation went on for years. The people would not allow it. And some people chained themselves to various things on the land to delay the process. And in my research about that airport, there's a lot of things that ought to have happened and did not happen. And hopefully, I think the lawyers need to partner with the environmentalists. We need this in Dominica immediately. And in that partnership, the lawyers have to be able to be the shock troops for the environmental people who will identify the areas which are in danger. And you come to the lawyers who are those who are conveniently listening, and then attack legally every single breach of every inch of the land that we say is protected. We should be ready to move and file court action within weeks, not months, weeks. And if we're not able to do that, we have a problem. We also have a dysfunctional society in that if the parliament, because we have the people, the constitution, the president, the government, in that order. But importantly, in a democracy, I always say that these things are not real democracies, they are immature democracies. Because the bar association in all of these countries are supposed to act to ensure that the legislature does not overstep its bounds constitutionally, and whenever it does, the Bar Association is supposed to point them out and immediately move against them. In this current state, since 2011, even before that actually, 2009, we had an Attorney General who was appointed. Well, this is a big deal. Normally, a party comes to power, there's always lawyers involved. All activities, lawyers are involved. Whether it's good or bad, whether it's corrupt or not, whether it's religious or not, lawyers are involved. And most of them are there for bad reasons. But anyways, I will say that when there is an appointed Attorney General, as opposed to one that gets elected, happens to be a lawyer and then appointed to be the Attorney General, for whatever reason. Once that happens, that appointee is not the appointee of the government. Appointed by the government, however, their action is that on providing legal advice in the Parliament to ensure that the state conducts itself in an ethical, legal, constitutional manner. We saw that breakdown in the last month when they had a discussion about the president's, the sovereign president. That Attorney General is not a person we look to for political candor. That person is simply there as a professional to give us professional legal advice. That's through the members of Parliament, Prime Minister and his team, opposition and their team, and the senators, but also the Speaker. The Speaker is susceptible and must be to legal advice. Otherwise, he runs a frolic. So we need to be careful with that. So Francine Barron was an unelected official. She was an appointed Attorney General. The current one now, Mr. Peter, is an appointed Attorney General. Now these things are crucial now. It's crucial. If we had cause to raise, as I believe we do, a legal challenge via what is called a judicial review, you ask the government, the parliamentarian for Roseau Central said that government owns the Botanical Garden, so we can do what we want with it. I said, oh, is that right? I said, I'm sorry, but government doesn't own the Botanical Garden. And this is Botanical Garden number 2. You all understand that this is Botanical Garden number 2. Everybody understand that? Does everybody understand this is Botanical Garden number 2? You know, the first Botanical Garden, you know Fort Young, between Fort Young and the radio station?
Oh, yeah, yes.
That used to be Gardens number 1. It was used by the army in the 1850s, and when it was abandoned, they put in some special flowers, plants, some palms, and that became Botanical Gardens. Just a little strip. And by 1890, there was need for a bigger green space. Not a theme park, a bigger green space. So what happened? In 1891, first of all, the whole of, sometime you come from, I guess, almost by Louisville, coming down, that whole area was a sugarcane factory run by a William Davis. Barker State is what it was called. And in 1891, there was a deal by the then government to purchase the land that became Gardens number 2, Botanic Gardens number 2. But this is what it is in law. If I sell you some land, for example, I own that corner there, and you wouldn't buy the corner, I may place on that a covenant that stops you from doing pretty much what you want with it, so I can control and limit what happens to that corner, although I sell it to you. As long as you agree to buy it, under my terms, there's a covenant. This is the case with this Botanical Garden number 2. And before I even go there, let me just say that of all of the breaches of the national protection areas and national parks is Carpets National Parks. Why? Because I'm not if you're aware, but during the building of the hotel, several containers were brought in by ship and then brought to Portsmouth. Some were packed. They brought in plants at one point, ornamental plants from Florida. And the containers with the plants included small little toads. They call them Cuban tree frogs. And those Cuban tree frogs did the same devastation that those lizards did when they came here several decades ago. And if you see them, they are more aggressive. If they are in the wall, a native lizard sees you, he's on his way, massacre man is gone. This one, he just jumps in. He's looking at you all the time, he jumps in. And his body is more like a solid structure. So he's much tougher, and he eats the young lizards that we have here. So the population is decimated. And you start moving slowly. Now they're all over Mauritania, they're in Maho, Marsac, all over the place. And they move south from the port area. So right now we have a serious problem with the Cuban tree frogs in the Capri's National Park. So apart from not providing the normal wetland features, we actually have a invasive species doing a devastation from that part of the country going south. Now, so we go back to the botanical gardens, and I will try to be very brief. I don't really want to stay long. I have a very, very good botanical garden file. So, in 1891, William Davis makes a deal and sells Do you know what the price was for the botanical gardens? How much?
1,000 something pounds.
1,765 pounds. But importantly, what was more important? The most important is this. Let me just read that to you. So, all right. Remember I told you about covenants. When you sell something, you could put. This is what it said. Unto, it was conveyed, in other words, transferred. Unto her most gracious majesty, the Queen, at the time it was Victoria, her heirs and successors forever, to and for the absolute use and benefit of the presidency of Dominica. We say the presidency of Dominica is a reference to the people of Dominica. There's no president without the people and the constitution of Dominica. The president, third in line. Forever. If they took the gardens, as they have already done so, it could be an international conflict because the land is conveyed to the royal family, their heirs, forever. That means there's a live covenant on that piece of land, and they can't do whatever they want to do. And don't be confused because the government sets up a body to supposedly make decisions that body will have any decision. It will not have any power at all. Because there's such a committee in Wesley for the airport. There was such a group of people for Kaplinsky. Did they have any effect? No. But hear this. Because of the judicial review features of our judicial system, anybody can challenge the government's intention to keep what they have just taken. And we go to court. These features have two sections. First, an application for leave to seek full judicial review. It's two parts. And we had a judge here, and whenever you file a judicial review against the government, it never ends up on the second part. Well, then if that's the case, lawyers have to turn gangster. If there is no judicial respect for law and order, lawyers have to prepare to turn gangster. We can't be suckers. Suckers are any ordinary sucker who takes whatever is available to him. Gangsters operate differently. So if the judge will stop a judicial review application by not allowing it to take its full course in the court, we need to remove that judge. And we go straight for, if any mistake they make, appeal. So that's a court of appeal or the CCJ. This particular judge is very particular, and we're watching and monitoring her very closely. But she comes from the CCJ. She was an administrator of the CCJ. And what I've seen, I think she could cut her name right here. Because she must be aware of what was said about her predecessors. Gangsters are the only one operating in these parts. And as a result of that, lawyers are going to be gangsters. So what we're saying is this. The gardens have been taken. We need to sit down and work out a strategy between the environmentalists and the lawyers who are willing to take it down. Put in place structures that ensures that no other government could take any green space in this country again. And this has almost nothing to do with us, because all of us will die eventually. But what we produce or what we produce may produce what we never see, we never know. We need to fight. A bowling alley in the gardens does not help any of us. A Chinese pagoda in the top and end gates, wherever you put the blasted gate, is not going to help us. This place needs to remain a green space. They need to respect the protected areas. And those individuals who are working prior in the system are the very people that are being paid as consultants to make it possible for them to abuse the situation. Look at carefully at who was the consultant in changing the scope of the national parks and protected areas. So I'm ready. I don't care how long, I know what abuse they will do, I don't care. They tried to kill me in December 2015, it didn't work. You die when God said you're going to die. Not when your assassin says you're going to die. And this business of just sitting and talking will bring no change in this country. If every day I beat you and you do me nothing, I will kill you eventually. Of course. But if every day I beat you and your resistance is stronger, I will eventually find a place to run. Those people who think they can come and take green spaces in this country, we should run the hell out of it. This is supposed to be a tranquil, natural country. It's not anybody's playground. It's a place for relaxation, a place to live, a place to relax, a place to grow, a place to raise our families. But we must raise them with guidance, care, support, respect for nature. That's why we're still here.
That's right.
Those are my contributions.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
So any general question?
We see you with
Yes.
Yes.
Let me say one thing. There is a country in the Caribbean that used a UN convention to stop just what they did there to the gardens. Does anybody know what international convention was used? Does anybody know? And yet, we have signed such an document. We haven't transposed it to national law, but we signed it. That means you can have a legitimate expectation that the goals that they have signed, the plenipotentiary of this country have signed on our behalf as Dominican citizens. We have a legitimate expectation to demand that. And that convention, what it basically puts overall is that it forces any governing body to consult before they do anything. There was no consultation about what's going on outside there. There's no consultation in Kaplinsky. There's no consultation about the airport. There's no consultation about even the sites where they are digging up the aggregate. Let's take it. So anybody know what that thing is called?
Mr. Pascal, yes.
Mr. Pascal?
Yes. Not yes,
No, I don't want to answer the question I ask you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation, I think, and all the other presentations.
Yes.
But I have a little confusion. The way that you just spoke there, compared to what I heard from Mr. Martin, to me there is a meeting plan to meet with the Parliament of Rose to work together to see how we can make those two things work together. The plans that we just presented there together with all of the other things that the board in Ali and so on. So somebody need to help me clarify. What is the meeting next week about?
Well, I'm not involved in no meeting with Melissa. I didn't Melissa. What I'm saying though is this, that what the government has done. See, the problem we have in this country, and we have some people in Parliament which I refer to them as the brat pack. They do whatever they want. They claim legal immunity and constitutional rights when they have none. Recently, we saw a series of people paraded in a Chinese city saying that they came to twin whatever the city was in China with Dominica. There's no such thing. Twinning is taking place by mayors from both parties. This is just cooperation agreements. That's all it is. Minor things, cultural exchanges and so on. Plenipotentiary who sign legal agreements are not pirates. So a pirate from Rose will kind of come and say that gardens belong to the government and therefore, no, go and speak to your attorney general or the other 12 lawyers that work for you. You can't just come and say that. And when we tell you that you don't own the land, you just ignore us and you continue to do what you want. It's not happening, I'm sorry. It's not happening. Once this land was purchased in 1891, the stones, the cane were removed and the planting began. But you know the funny thing about it? The English know more about the botanicals than we do. The English know more. The English have a better record of every plant that was here, how long it took to germinate, its cycles, and we don't have that information. The English do. Q managed all of these, and I say former empire gardens, they managed all of it from the UK. There are plants that were here that were growing in controlled climate in the UK. And those plants are not here. So I'm not in this meeting with whoever that they should talk. And the thing is this. You need a lawyer acting like a gangster. So let me tell you something. What fruits would bear such a meeting If they have done all what they have done and they have paid off the consultants, what fruit would that do? What fruit would you bear? Apart from frustration and perhaps anger. You know, any general comments?
Just read already as to what the organization is. Could you kind of finish up the answer as to
which? Mr. Pascal, can you tell us what it is? I think the country was Grenada.
Yeah.
Good. Mr. Pascal, can you tell us the name of that convention?
What convention? For me to make a presentation.
Yes, of course.
What the Grenadians use?
We're talking about the ESCASU agreement, which is a regional agreement of countries from Latin America and the Caribbean that will give citizens the right to access to information, anything that has to do with environment, access to participation, for public participation in any kind of project that would entail their own development, and also access to legal redress in anything that is affecting them. Dominica has signed this agreement, but they have not made it part of our national legislation. So they refuse to, for the time being, to ratify that ESCASU agreement. Perhaps Dominica is one of the last countries that will be able to sign. But we were part of the development of that, and all government so far has signed. So they have a commitment to the work. For it to be effective in Dominica, it must be ratified and be part of our legislation. All of the people that we have in Parliament, they are afraid of giving the people that right, the right to be informed, the right to participate in those things, and also the right to legal redress if anything that is affecting us. So that ESCASU agreement is something that perhaps we need to pay better attention to.
Thank you very much for that.
So if you know the government there, nobody knows.
Yeah, we signed it. Now let me just say this. I filed a matter a few days ago, and I referred to a UN convention that we signed and we ratified. I provided to the court the proof that we signed it and the proof that we ratified it. And I'm going to use that in the case. And it's a case, all of you eventually get to hear about it, it's a case for the protection of children in this country. It's horrendous what's taking place in our name. And at some point, I hope some lawyer, maybe bigger than me, taller than me, more intelligent, more resources than I, could force the state to have an inquiry into the adoption racket on the Kalinago people. I will try my best to mention it, but it needs to have its own specific route, legal route in the court.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tianzi, for this very exciting and interesting presentation. Okay, so now we have our forum has come to an end. We want to thank Igbo News for bringing it live. I think all the questions have been exhausted. What we do have is a form so that all of you here who want to become friends of the Botanical Gardens can write your contact information, and we will let you know what's going on from now. So we will regroup, and then we'll let you know what's the next steps. Yes?
Yes, I would like to ask, when Mr. Urban Market going to visit the Parliament representative from the Central, is he alone going to deliver, or are you going there as a
No, there are two other persons who will be going there.
Okay, what with this things like water, for the botanical gardens before, those are the things we have to talk about, but the bowling alley and the what do you call them?
The golf course.
The golf course. No, that doesn't come in Botanical Gardens. So Martin, please put your eggs in the basket and tell them no. That's not coming in. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks to everyone. We'll end with a prayer. We didn't begin with a prayer, but we'll end with a prayer. So, yes, you know, thank you. Okay, so can we all stand? I think we'll just repeat the Lord's Prayer. Oh, Father, okay, so thanks to everyone who came up. It was a wonderful occasion. We will see you again soon.
On behalf of MONews, we thank you all for joining us here this evening for this Friends of the Garden Forum. Have a blessed night, everyone.